Alright, so today what we're going to do is we're going to build a simple grid view that will retrieve data from an XML file. We'll do two XML files in our project and we'll see how we can retrieve that data using certain transform files called XSLT files. So first thing we're going to do is going to create a new website. It'll be an ASP.NET empty website. And we'll give it a home. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're not going to start by adding a ASPX file. First we're going to do is create our XML files. So I'm going to add new item. And we'll start by adding an XML file. So we're going to scroll down a little bit more towards the end. We have our XML. We're going to call it cars.xml. And hit add. And let's start by adding in our cars. So we'll start by defining a root node called cars. And I like how Visual Studio auto completes those closing tags. So we'll start with our first object, which will be a car object. And within car, we'll have make, model, and year. So we'll start with make being a Chevy model will be Camaro, and year will be 1993. So I'm going for some classic muscle cars of the 90s. So another car object, make will be Ford, model Mustang, and year will be 1997. And car make will be Pontiac. And then model will be Trans Am. Year will be 1998. And that'll be our XML file. So we'll do save that. Let's add one more XML file. Let's add new item. We'll do another XML. We'll do a dogs XML. And we'll do the same thing again for dogs. So we'll start with our root node, dogs. Our objects will be dog. And within dog, we'll have type, age, and color. So first type will be a pit bull. And his age will be 5. And color will be beige. Next dog. So type will be Yorkie. Age will be 2. And color color will be black. And last dog, type will be German Shepherd. Age will be 7. And finally, color will be brown. Now, be very careful with your naming of your tags. You need to make sure that your opening and closing tags line up. So type and then closing type, dog and closing dog, dogs and closing dog, dogs. That is, so you want to ensure that the tags line up really nice. Otherwise, you're going to have problems when you're trying to display things. Alright, so we've created 2 XML files. Now, in order for them to be readable by a GridView or another object within ASP.NET, we need to have something called a transform file, or a file that will translate what it will read. So we're going to add a new transform file. So we'll say add new item, and this time we're going to look for an XSLT file, which is a couple of items below. I'm going to call this first one cars XSLT. Right, and when we open this XSLT file, I'll go full screen on this. It looks very cryptic to begin with, very strange looking text. But once you understand what it's asking for, it's actually not that bad at all. So we'll leave the preamble at the beginning. So the XML style sheet, the XSL output. We'll start off with XSL template. What it's trying to tell me right here is that it's looking to match something. In fact, we're going to start by matching our root node, which is cars. Right, and what we'll do is we'll change the XSL copy to match that node as well. So cars. And then closing cars. Right. Now it's saying once we hit the cars tag, what do we do? So we're going to tell it that we want to look for the car object. So car without the S. So now we have to tell it what to do when it hits car. So we're going to create another XSL template. We're going to tell it to match car without the S this time. Alright, and we'll open up with a tag for car. And now we have to tell it what to look for within car. And we have within car, we have make, model, and year. So we're going to tell it to look for the attribute make. So we're going to say XSL attribute. We're going to tell it to look for car. So say name equals, make. Now if it hits make, then what we're going to do is tell it to pull out that value for make. So we're going to say XSL value of, and we'll say select equals make. Alright, so at this point we have selected the make. We're going to do the exact same thing for model and year. So I'm just going to copy and paste 2 more times. just change the next one to model. And the last one to year. And that's it. That's our XSLT file, or our transform file. So essentially what we're doing is telling it, look for the root node cars. When it hits cars, look for a root object called car, or a sub-object called car. When it hits car, then within car we're going to find make, model, and year. If we hit make, model, and year, pull out the value from make, model, and year. And note that the spelling within the double quotes for everything needs to match up with the exact spelling for your tags. If you don't, then you're going to have issues with your grid view when you get data to appear. So we're done with this. Just going to save it. We'll do the same thing for dogs. And we'll do their XSLT file. So dogs.xslt. Alright, and so we'll just go through the same motion again. And in fact, I'm just going to save some time and paste it in, since it's basically the exact same code, but with dogs this time around. Alright, so we have our XSLT file just for dogs. Let's go over it again. So it's going to expect us to hit a root node called dogs, right? And if we do hit a root node called dogs, we should have sub-objects called dog. And when we hit dog, then we're going to see type, age, and color. And if we hit type, age, and color, we should retrieve the values for type, age, and color. And essentially, same idea as the cars, except we're using dogs now with different tags. So we can just save this, and let's move on to the final step, which is to get this data to display inside a grid view. So to do that, we need to actually add in an ASPX file to work with. So we're going to add a new item. This time we'll go and look for a web form. And we'll keep it as default.aspx. We'll say code in a separate file, no master page this time. And we're going to use design view this time around. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a grid view. Auto format, let's add a little style to it. So we go classic again. Now we're going to add a new data source. So in the past exercises, we were using an SQL database. It created an SQL data source 1. We're going to actually instead use an XML file, and it'll create XML data source 1 for us. A different menu comes up this time, a little bit more simpler than the past ones for the SQL database. There's 3 options here. We're only going to use the first 2. The first one is data file. So we're going to start with the cars XML file. So we'll specify cars XML. And we'll hit OK. Now the transform file, the XSLT file, is what it's looking for. So we're going to browse. And it's peculiar because it's actually looking for an XSL file. And this has always been the case for all of the Visual Studios that I've worked with. Now, I'm going to have to hit all files because I'm looking for an XSLT file. So it's something that Microsoft, I don't think they've ever fixed or noticed in terms of this little bug here, but it should be looking for XSLT files as well. So we're saying cars XSLT.xslt. We'll hit OK. So we have our data file of cars XML, our transform file of cars XSLT.xslt. We'll hit OK. And if everything went well, you should have all of your data appear. And it should appear nicely. There shouldn't be any issues, no errors and whatnot. In fact, let's do this for the dogs as well, just for completeness. So we're going to drag over a grid view. Auto format again to classic. And we'll choose a different data source, so create new data source. XML file, so it says XML data source 2. Now browse for our dogs XML. Our XSLT file will be dogs XSLT. And no XPath expression. So we'll hit OK. And there was an error here, which is good because now we can actually try debugging it. So it says here the data source for GridView 2 did not have any properties or attributes which generate columns. Ensure your data source has content. So let's find out what happened there. Let's start with dogs XSLT. Now, if you notice, I actually forgot to save. So let's do a Control S to save. And we'll hit default.aspx again. Now, if you have an error, you should be able to recover easily by saying refresh schema. And there we go. So my mistake, I didn't save my dogs XSLT file after I had put in my data. And so it didn't work. So now it does. Now it's saying type, age, color. It has all my data. And essentially, I'm able to read from XML files. But just to verify, let's say view in browser. And there you have it. You have both grid views appearing with all the data we entered in for our XML files. So to recap, what did we learn today? We learned about how to create an XML file. We learned how to create an XML transform file known as an XSLT file. We learned how to connect the XML and the XSLT files to a grid view to display the data directly.